My parents called me the independent one. That was their excuse for abandoning me. This is the story of Emma Whitmore, a daughter dismissed by her own family, forced to fight alone for everything her sister was handed. While they invested in one child, Emma worked two jobs, built a business from scratch, and rose to become the university's most celebrated graduate without a cent from home. But her true moment didn't come on stage. It came at the family dinner table when the truth could no longer be ignored. This isn't just a story of success, it's a reckoning, a return, a legacy rewritten. We only had enough for one of you. That was the sentence that split my world in two. My father said it so plainly, like he was reading off a grocery list, while my mother nodded along with a sympathetic grimace she'd practiced for years. The words settled over the dinner table like dust, quiet but suffocating. My acceptance letter to Westfield University lay forgotten beside my plate, its gold crest dulled under the weight of irrelevance. Lily's acceptance letter sat in her lap, her fingers still clutching it like it was a golden ticket. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. From the outside, our house in Grand Rapids looked like the embodiment of middle-class American stability. A freshly mowed lawn, the white fence my father repainted every spring, the brick chimney that puffed gently through Michigan's winters. Inside, it was colder than the snow that blanketed our street. My parents, Robert and Diana Whitmore, had built their image carefully, he with his starched accountant suits and she with her PTA hosting charm. But beneath the smiling family portraits and Sunday brunches, favoritism grew like mold in the corners no one bothered to clean. It had always been Lily. Lily with the golden hair and speech trophies. Lily, who danced at recitals while I sat alone backstage, sketching her from memory. She got birthday parties with ponies, I got a store-bought cake and a reminder that you're not a kid anymore. I had learned to survive on crumbs of praise, rationing them like wartime sugar. The day we both got accepted to Westfield should have been a breakthrough. I'd worked nights at a local cafe, pulled straight A's, and won a regional business competition. I thought maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me. Instead, I watched my parents pop open a bottle of champagne for Lily while I quietly cleared the dinner plates. 2 weeks later, at that dinner table, they made it official. Lily has always shown more academic promise, Dad said, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. We believe she'll make the best return on investment. Return on investment. I wasn't a daughter. I was a bad bet. I can take out loans, I managed to say, though my throat burned. Maybe get a scholarship. Mom reached across the table and gave my hand a soft pat. You've always been so independent, sweetie. You'll find your way, just like always. I excused myself and locked the bedroom door behind me. I didn't cry, not yet. I opened my laptop and began searching how to afford college without parental support. Financial aid forms, deadlines, scholarships for underdogs. I copied links into a spreadsheet. I bookmarked forums where other first-gen students told stories of living on instant noodles and sleeping in libraries. I inhaled them like oxygen. That night, I didn't sleep. I created a color-coded plan, grants, loans, part-time work. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this much. I would walk into Westfield University, even if I had to crawl to get there. Somewhere around 3 o'clock a.m., I pulled open the top drawer of my nightstand and found a folded paper tucked beneath old sketches and bent pencils. It was a note from Grandma Eleanor, given to me years ago after a summer at her lake house. Pressure makes diamonds. You, my dear, are already forming. I held it against my chest like armor. My parents had chosen their diamond. They just didn't know they'd left the real one behind. In the weeks that followed, the house transformed into a shrine to Lily's future. Catalogs for dorm decor arrived daily. My mother meticulously created a checklist for her, itemizing everything from twin Sheets, 2 color-coded folders. There were mall trips, laptop upgrades, and new luggage sets with matching initials. My father called the Westfield admissions office 3 times to confirm Lily's housing, meal plan, and course load. No one asked me where I would live. No one asked if I had books, a bed, or even a ride to campus. I packed my belongings into cardboard boxes I collected behind grocery stores. My suitcases were thrifted, zippers stiff and frayed. I spent my afternoons at the library, filling out FAFSA forms, scanning forums, emailing potential landlords, and applying to every obscure scholarship I could find. For daughters of veterans, for students who have overcome adversity, for young women pursuing business with limited financial support. I checked every box. I wrote every essay. One afternoon, while my parents were out celebrating Lily's acceptance with their friends at a steakhouse, I got a call from Westfield's financial aid office. Ms. Whitmore, we've reviewed your application. You qualify for partial aid and work-study. It's not a full ride, but it's something. Thank you, I said, clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I found a shared apartment 45 minutes from campus with 3 other girls I'd never met. The rent was cheap and the plumbing questionable, but it had a mattress and a locking door. It would be enough. The night before we were to leave for school, my mother hovered at the door to my room, holding a faded set of sheets in her arms. "These are from when I was in college," she said, setting them on top of my box of clothes. "They're still clean. Mostly." I nodded. "Thanks." She stood there for a moment like she wanted to say something, like maybe this time she'd acknowledge the difference. Instead, she turned and walked away. The next morning, Lily's suitcases were neatly stacked in the back of the family SUV. My father double-checked her course packets while my mother made sandwiches for the road. I loaded my boxes into my 10-year-old Honda Civic that overheated every other day and made a low growl when I braked. No one offered to drive with me. No one asked if I had gas money. At the campus gates, they pulled into the premium dormitory lot. I waved from the road, but they didn't see me. They were too busy taking photos of Lily in her new Westfield sweatshirt, arms raised in triumph like she'd conquered Rome. I kept driving. My apartment was worse than the listing suggested. The walls were yellowed, the ceiling fan didn't turn, and the window faced a brick wall. My roommates were loud, one of them smoked inside, and the only thing in the fridge was expired milk. I set my single sheet on the mattress, curled up in a hoodie, and closed my eyes. But I didn't cry. Thought about my grandmother again. I imagined her sitting beside me like she did that summer when I was 12, watching me sketch the lake at dusk. She once told me sometimes the ones who go unnoticed grow into something unshakable. I opened my laptop, created a spreadsheet labeled The Plan. I mapped every hour of my week, classes, work-study shifts, scholarship deadlines, gym slots I couldn't afford but could imagine, as every cell was a promise I made to myself. They had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. Let them have the celebration, the parties, the pictures with sparkling cider. I didn't need an audience. I was already building my stage. By the second week of classes, I had already memorized the rhythm of survival. Wake up at 5:15 a.m., shower in the flickering bathroom light, eat a granola bar while walking to the cafe, where I clocked in at 6 a.m. sharp to open shop before the first wave of pre-lecture caffeine addicts. Brew, mop, refill syrups, smile. When my shift ended at 10:45, I speed-walked to campus for back-to-back business courses. Lunch, if it happened, was whatever I could sneak between classes, a banana, half a peanut butter sandwich. Then came studying in the library or tutoring freshmen in microeconomics for a few extra bucks. At 6:00 p.m., I worked a second shift at the used bookstore. I dragged myself home at 11, feet aching, mind spinning, and set my alarm for tomorrow's repeat. I wasn't surviving college, I was enduring it. And no one seemed to notice. Except Zoe. Zoe Nguyen, my accidental roommate, was everything I wasn't. Soft-voiced but sharp-witted, majoring in sociology with a minor in human compassion. While I hoarded silence, Zoe watched quietly, observing me the way she'd later tell me she observed case studies, not to judge, but to understand. One night, I opened the fridge after a double shift and saw a Tupperware container labeled M. Inside was warm rice, grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, real food. I blinked, unsure if I was hallucinating. Zoe looked up from the couch, textbook in her lap. "It's yours," she said simply. "You skipped dinner again yesterday." "I didn't expect. You never do," she replied, smiling without condescension. "That's the problem." I stood there, container in hand, paralyzed not by hunger, but by the terrifying feeling of being seen, really seen. That night we talked for the first time, not just, "Hey, I'm late," or "Do you mind turning the volume down?" but really talked. About her Vietnamese-American upbringing, the parents who had survived refugee camps, and how she believed survival wasn't enough. "You have to fight for a life worth living," she told me, handing me tea in a chipped mug. "And sometimes that means having someone to eat with." Zoe became my lifeline in ways she never flaunted. She started printing my lecture notes when I was running late, left sticky note reminders on the fridge, sat beside me while I studied, and quizzed me between sips of instant ramen. "I don't get it," I admitted once, after she caught me skipping another meal. "Why are you helping me?" She shrugged. "Because family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who chooses you, even when you're too tired to choose back." I didn't know how to respond to that. I just nodded, finished the rice, and felt a little less alone. Meanwhile, in class, something unexpected happened. I was thriving. Professor Caroline Bennett, who taught business ethics, had a sharp tongue and sharper standards. Most students feared her. I found her magnetic. She spoke in case studies and quoted real-world collapses like parables. One day, during a discussion on the ethical failures of family-run companies, I raised my hand and offered an insight drawn not from textbooks, but from my own lived experience. "The problem isn't just nepotism," I said. "It's when trust becomes entitlement. When people assume shared blood means unquestioned loyalty, even when it leads to collapse." Professor Bennett paused. Then she smiled. "Miss Whitmore," she said, "you just described the first chapter of your thesis. Stay after class." That one sentence unraveled something inside me. For the first time, my pain wasn't baggage. It was data. It was value. It was mine. After class that day, I stood awkwardly by Professor Bennett's desk while the last of the students trickled out. She didn't look up immediately. She finished scribbling something in her notebook, then finally turned to me with eyes that felt like X-rays. "You said something today that most students don't realize until their second job," she said, folding her arms. "What's your background?" The question made me hesitate. "Financially independent," I said, choosing the phrase carefully. "First-gen student, I work about 30 hours a week." Her brow rose. "You run a household and a transcript?" "I run a spreadsheet," I replied. She laughed. "Even better." We talked for 10 minutes about ethics, startups, family systems. She asked if I'd be interested in applying for the university's annual business pitch competition. I'd heard whispers about it, students winning funding for real ventures, judged by actual executives, but I never imagined someone like me would be invited. "You're already operating like a founder," she said. "Now it's time the world knew." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, a blank document pulsing back at me. Zoe slid into the seat across from me, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "What's this face?" she asked. "I think I'm supposed to write a business proposal," I said, staring at the cursor like it might blink out instructions. "For what?" "Professor Bennett wants me to enter a competition." Her eyes lit up. "That's amazing." "I don't even have a business," I mumbled. "You do," she said gently. "You just haven't named it yet." It was true. For months, I'd been freelancing in between shifts, helping small shops near campus with their bookkeeping, scheduling, and email marketing. I built spreadsheets that saved them hours. One coffeehouse owner even told me I'd done more for her workflow than any software she'd paid for. I hadn't thought of it as a business. I thought of it as staying afloat. Zoe leaned forward. What if you pitched a service that supports local small businesses? You already do it. Package it. That weekend, we spread out index cards across the floor like puzzle pieces. We named the company Whitmore Assist. I built the website from scratch. Zoe helped with copywriting. I created 3 service tiers and practiced my pitch in the mirror until my voice stopped shaking. I told no one else. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family settled into its predictable silence. My parents sent a group email wishing Lily a happy midterm week and forgot to BCC me. I saw a photo on Facebook of them visiting her for her sorority fundraiser. They hadn't visited me once. But I didn't need their presence to measure my progress anymore. I had a mentor who saw potential, a roommate who fed me when I forgot to feed myself, and a startup that might actually go somewhere. Every client I signed, every hour of sleep I sacrificed for a deliverable felt like another brick. In the house, I was building with my own 2 hands. One night after uploading my application to the competition portal, I sat on the fire escape behind our apartment. The city hummed below me. Buses, music, sirens. I thought about everything I'd carried to get here. The rejection, the silence, the drive no one saw coming. I still had nothing. Except everything. And I wasn't done yet. The morning of graduation dawned cool and cloudless, the kind of day that felt choreographed by the universe itself. Sunlight poured through my apartment window, catching the edges of the framed scholarship certificate on my desk. I'd barely slept, though not from nerves, more from the gravity of everything this day represented. I sat on the edge of my bed and traced the embroidered words on the graduation stole Grandma Eleanor had sent weeks earlier. Diamonds are made under pressure. She'd sewn it herself, each stitch an echo of the summers we spent together on the porch of her lake house, where she always told me I was born to rise, not beg. Zoe peeked her head in from the hallway, grinning. "Your carriage awaits, boss lady." She was joking, of course. We were taking her Toyota Corolla with a cracked bumper and a coffee-stained back seat. But I smiled anyway. This time, I wasn't arriving at Westfield in a beat-up Honda with shaky brakes. This time, I was walking in with everything I'd built carried not in my hands, but in the eyes of people who had watched me claw my way up. Campus was electric. Parents in dresses and suits milled about with maps and cameras, flowers in hand, professors in flowing academic robes gathered near the auditorium steps. I adjusted my cap as we pulled into the parking lot reserved for honorees. My name was on that list. I had checked twice. Inside the robing area, I spotted Lily almost immediately. Her blonde hair was perfectly curled under her cap, her smile tense but sincere. She rushed over and pulled me into a hug. "Can you believe we made it?" she whispered, eyes gleaming. "We did," I said, smoothing the edge of her gown. "In our own way." She pulled back to look at me. "Everyone's talking about your speech. They're saying it's the highlight of the whole ceremony." I blinked. "What? You didn't know?" She laughed softly. "You're closing the program. Dean Rodriguez said they want to end with something powerful." I felt the edges of reality blur slightly. My name had been listed as student speaker, but I hadn't realized they were saving me for last. Before I could respond, Dean Rodriguez approached us with her usual poise and a conspiratorial gleam in her eyes. "Ms. Whitmore," she said, her voice low and steady, "you're up right after the conferring of degrees. Just follow the president's cue. And," she lowered her voice further, "be ready for a longer introduction than expected." What kind of introduction? Her only answer was a wink before disappearing back into the crowd. We were ushered into formation, graduates lining up alphabetically. Lily stood 4 names ahead of me. As we walked toward the auditorium doors, I stole a glance at the family section. My parents sat in the front row, in perfect view of the stage. My father wore his best navy suit, the one he reserved for client meetings and funerals. My mother's floral dress was bold, the kind meant to draw compliments. They looked polished, poised, proud. But not for me. They didn't see me yet. Grandma Eleanor sat between them, elegant in her signature blue. Unlike them, her eyes didn't scan the crowd. They found me instantly. She nodded once, just once, and in that gesture I felt steadier than I had all morning. This was it. I straightened my shoulders and took my first step down the aisle, not as the forgotten daughter of Robert and Diana Whitmore, but as Madeline, the girl they left behind, the woman they could no longer ignore. The ceremony moved in a dignified rhythm. Anthems, speeches, applause at safe intervals. I sat among the sea of black robes and color-coded cords, listening with half my mind as the university president, Dr. Harlow, spoke about perseverance and progress. His voice echoed through the high ceiling of the auditorium, but it barely registered. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. The quiet thrum of years collapsing into minutes. When they called Lily's name, my parents erupted in applause. My mother stood to snap photos, her phone held high. My father's smile was wide, practiced. Lily accepted her diploma with grace, waving politely to the audience, her expression calm. She turned once on her way down the stage and gave me a look. Soft, almost regretful, a bridge being rebuilt 1 brick at a time. Then my name echoed across the hall. Madeline Whitmore, valedictorian, School of Business, founder of Whitmore Assist, winner of the National Business Innovation Award. The applause came late, hesitant at first, scattered claps as people searched for me with their eyes, and then it built. Louder, fuller. A few people stood. I walked the long stretch to the stage, past rows of faculty and alumni, hearing my grandmother's whistle slice through the air like an arrow. It made me smile. I shook hands. I received the scroll. But there was no time to return to my seat. Dr. Harlow returned to the podium. "Before we conclude," he said, "we invite Madeline Whitmore to share this year's student address. Please welcome her." The applause resumed, but I barely heard it. I stepped up to the microphone, notes folded but untouched in my hand. I looked out, not just at the crowd, but at the 2 faces I'd spent a lifetime trying to reach. They were watching me now. 4 years ago, I began, voice steady, I walked onto this campus with nothing but a duffel bag, a stack of loan documents, and a single quote from my grandmother: "Diamonds are made under pressure." I didn't come here with a safety net. I came with a plan. I spoke about waking before sunrise to work shifts before class, about tutoring peers, skipping meals, building a company in the space between exhaustion and necessity, talked about finding mentors who saw past the silence I carried, about building something from nothing, not to impress anyone, but to survive. I was told I wasn't a good investment, I said quietly, letting the silence after that statement land, that someone else deserved more, and maybe that's true. But the most valuable lesson I learned here is that no one else defines your worth. Not your professors, not your classmates, not even your family. I paused, searching for the right ending. Your value is not in what others give you, it's in what you build when they give you nothing. Applause started before I finished the last sentence. It stepped back from the podium, and that's when Dr. Harlow returned. Not with the closing remarks, but with a smile that said the story wasn't done yet. "What many of you may not know," he said, "is that Ms. Whitmore achieved all of this, academic excellence, entrepreneurial innovation, national recognition, while fully self-financing her education. No family assistance, no safety net." A murmur spread through the audience. He wasn't done. In recognition of her resilience and brilliance, we are proud to announce the creation of the Madeline Whitmore Resilience Scholarship. Beginning next semester, it will support students who demonstrate exceptional determination in the face of adversity. People stood. The clapping became thunderous. I saw Lily rise first, tears streaking her cheeks. Then, slowly, my mother. My father followed, hands stiff at his sides, face pale. Everyone saw them now. Everyone knew. I stood in the center of that stage, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had something to prove. I felt free. The dining room shimmered with overcompensation. Crystal stemware, bone-white china, and flickering candles lined a table long enough to host a diplomatic summit. Conversation hummed across the space like static, rising and falling in polite waves as relatives who hadn't spoken in years performed the ritual of family. I stepped through the archway, Lily and Grandma Eleanor at my side, and the entire room froze for just a moment too long. "Emma, you came!" my mother said, rising from her seat near the center of the table. Her smile was practiced, her tone pitched too high, the kind of greeting used for guests you weren't expecting and didn't especially want. I recognized it. I had once been the child that hug never reached. Now, I was the variable she couldn't control. "We were just about to serve," she continued, motioning to the empty seat near the end of the table, far from the center, from her. Grandma Eleanor gave her a look that withered any further commentary. "We'll sit together," she said firmly, pulling out a chair near Lily's and settling in as if it were a throne. I took the seat beside her. Zoe had been invited too, but she'd tactfully declined. "They don't deserve a seat at your table," she'd texted me earlier. "But you do." The table resumed its buzz, slightly off rhythm now, like a record with a scratch. My parents' expressions were taut. My father overly engaged in a conversation with his brother about property taxes, my mother cutting her roast chicken as if it had wronged her personally. Across the table, Uncle Jack leaned toward me. "Emma," he said, too loudly, "I heard you won some big national competition. Business something?" I smiled, meeting his eyes. "The National Business Innovation Award," I said. "It came with funding and a job offer from Alexander Global." The table hushed again, this time like breath being collectively held. My father chuckled, but the sound was hollow. "Well, you've always been very resourceful," he said, reaching for his wine glass. Lily's voice cut through, clear and steady. "You mean she built a 6-figure business while working 2 jobs and going to school full-time, and none of us even knew?" Our mother froze mid-sip. The words landed like dropped silverware. Clean, undeniable. "She did it without support," Lily continued, turning to the table. "While I had tuition paid, a dorm fully furnished, and weekly care packages, Emma was figuring out how to afford textbooks and rent." My parents shifted uncomfortably. My mother's fork scraped her plate as she set it down, her mouth drawn into a thin line. "That's not entirely fair." She murmured. "Emma's always been so independent, we assumed—" "You assumed I didn't need you," I said, my voice soft but slicing through the noise. "You were wrong." My father stiffened. "This isn't the time or place for—" "It is," Grandma Eleanor said, not raising her voice, but still managing to command the room. "It's exactly the time." A silence followed, dense, loaded for the first time in years. I wasn't invisible in this house. I wasn't the girl they dressed in neutrality and silence. I was the woman they could no longer dismiss. And I hadn't even opened the envelope in my bag yet. I reached into my tote bag and withdrew a sleek navy folder. The kind handed out at press conferences, not family dinners. The university's logo was embossed in gold. I laid it gently on the table just beside my untouched plate. "What's that?" my father asked. Tone casual. Too casual, like he already regretted asking. I opened it slowly. Inside was a printed copy of the Business Innovation magazine feature, spread across 2 pages. My face on the cover. Headline in bold, "From Forgotten to Founder. Emma Whitmore and the New Face of Entrepreneurial Grit." Gasps slipped from a few relatives. Aunt Susan leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. Uncle Jack let out a low whistle. My mother sat frozen, the blood visibly draining from her face. "This was released yesterday," I said. "It'll be in next week's mailers, but I brought a few advance copies." I slid one across to my grandmother, who beamed with pride, one to Uncle Jack, who accepted it reverently. I did not offer one to my parents. I think the part that surprised people, I continued, keeping my voice steady, was that I had no financial support from my family, that it was all self-funded, earned, alone. The silence was razor sharp. I could feel it cutting through every layer of pretense at that table. My mother's lips parted as if to object, but no sound came. My father stared at the article, then at me, as though seeing both for the first time. Lily reached for my hand under the table and gave it a squeeze. "I want to be clear," I said, looking directly at them now. "This isn't about shame or revenge. This is about truth. For 4 years, I've stayed quiet while you celebrated one daughter and discarded the other. And maybe I let you. Maybe I was too tired to fight, but today I'm done carrying your silence." "You're twisting things," my mother whispered. "It wasn't like that. We did our best." "No," I said gently. "You did your safest. You invested in the daughter who looked the part, said the right things, made you comfortable. I made you uncomfortable, so you cut me loose and called it independence." Someone at the far end of the table muttered, "Well, damn," and the sound of it felt like a judgment passed. My father pushed back his chair slightly. "We've always been proud of you, Emma." "Then why did I have to win awards for you to say it?" His mouth opened, then shut again. There was no answer. "I didn't come here to humiliate you," I added, my voice softer now. "I came to end the myth that I was nothing, that I was unworthy. You don't have to love what I've become, but you will see it." The tension broke with Grandma Eleanor rising from her seat. She wasn't quick. Her knees protested. Her hand trembled slightly. But when she stood, it was like an anthem. She took her copy of the magazine and raised it for the whole table to see. "This," she said, her voice ringing clear, "is what happens when you refuse to be defined by small minds. I've known it since she was 6 years old." The entire table erupted not into applause, but into a deep, reverent hush. And in that silence I stood, tucking the folder back into my bag. "I have a celebration to attend," I said simply, "with people who didn't need to be impressed to care." Lily stood beside me. "I'm coming too." We walked out together, leaving behind the wine glasses, the whispers, the forced smiles, and our parents seated in stunned silence as the weight of truth settled over their curated table. Outside, the night air was cool and forgiving, and for the first time I felt weightless. The atrium of the Westfield School of Business glowed with soft uplighting and celebration. Silver and navy banners draped the walls, each stamped with Class of Excellence 2025. Crystal punch bowls sparkled under the chandeliers. Jazz hummed softly from a quartet near the stage. I stepped through the glass doors and felt the warm weight of belonging wrap around me like a tailored coat. This was a different world than the dinner table I had just left. Less porcelain, more purpose. And unlike that house, where every compliment was calculated, this place had been built by people who saw me before the headlines. Zoe met me at the entrance, her curls bouncing, eyes shining. "There she is," she grinned, pulling me into a fierce hug. "The woman of the hour." Behind her, a banner read, "Outstanding Entrepreneur Award, Emma Whitmore," in bold serif letters. I hadn't known they were going to print it. "You didn't have to," I began. Zoe rolled her eyes. "You worked 30 hours a week while building a 6-figure company and graduating at the top of your class. This is me doing the bare minimum." We laughed, and for a moment everything felt light. Not weightless from exhaustion, but light in the way you feel when something heavy has finally been set down. Grandma Eleanor walked in moments later, Lily at her side, both women scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and quiet reverence only outsiders turned insiders carry. I rushed to them. "You look like a senator's wife," I teased, kissing Grandma's cheek. She wore navy with silver buttons and a brooch, shaped like a compass. "Direction matters," she said with a wink. "I thought I'd dress the part." Dean Rodriguez appeared beside us with champagne flutes in hand. She handed one to me, then to Grandma. "I've been looking forward to this moment all week," she said. "You have no idea how much your story has resonated with faculty and with incoming students." "Apparently, resilience is contagious," I said, only half joking. Dean Rodriguez turned to Lily. "And this must be your sister. The one who raised the biggest toast at the graduation dinner, from what I hear." Lily laughed, a little pink creeping into her cheeks. It was overdue. Across the room, Professor Bennett emerged from a group of alumni and made her way over. Her signature sleek bun and tailored blazer made her look more like a CEO than an educator. She held a manila envelope under one arm. "I have something for you," she said without preamble, handing it to me. Inside was a letter from the Dean of Westfield's MBA program. An offer of full scholarship for graduate study, starting in the fall. My hands trembled slightly as I held it. "I don't even know if I want to stay," I admitted. New York, Alexander Global, the agency. You don't have to choose yet," she said. "Just know the door is open. You earned that." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you," I said, "for seeing me before anyone else did." "You made yourself visible," she replied. "All I did was pay attention." Lily glanced at the crowd around us. Faculty, students, mentors, people who had invested in me without conditions. "You really built all of this," she whispered. "Without them. Because of them," I corrected. "They showed me what family looks like when it's chosen, not assigned. And for the first time in my life, I understood what home felt like. Not a house, not a dinner table, but this. Laughter, belief, truth spoken aloud. A network of people who had watched me rise not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And I wasn't done rising yet." As the evening unfolded, I found myself in a rhythm of hugs, congratulations, and half-joking questions about hiring. The small business I'd started to keep the lights on was now something others wanted to emulate. Classmates I barely remembered from freshman econ approached with admiration in their eyes. One even asked, "What was the moment it all clicked for you?" I smiled, not out of pride, but because I knew the answer wasn't glamorous. "It didn't click," I said. "It built. One sleepless night, one quiet yes, one meal I didn't skip because someone cared." Toward the back of the room, near the business school emblem carved into dark walnut, stood Jennifer Alexander, founder of Alexander Global Consulting. Impeccably dressed, statuesque, with a gaze that assessed a person in seconds, she approached with the confidence of someone used to being the sharpest mind in any room. "Ms. Whitmore," she said, extending her hand. "Your pitch at the national competition was remarkable, but what really impressed us was how you turned survival into strategy." "Thank you," I replied, my grip firm, steady. "We don't usually hire new graduates," she added, "but you've already operated with the complexity and grit of someone 5 years into the field." "I suppose necessity is the best internship," I said. She smiled. "Your position is secure. But beyond that, we want to mentor your continued development. Think long term." It was more than I expected. More than I could have imagined 4 years ago, hunched over a secondhand laptop, applying for work-study jobs with fingers crossed. "I won't waste the opportunity," I said. Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly, almost approvingly. "I don't think you've ever wasted anything, Miss Whitmore. You strike me as someone who turns every scar into blueprint." She excused herself, and I turned back to my group, only to find Lily deep in conversation with Professor Bennett. I caught the end of it. Lily talking about the nonprofit job she'd just accepted. Education access, she said, particularly for students who come from, well, households where the odds are rigged from the start. Professor Bennett nodded. Then you'll understand the value of working quietly at first. Some walls don't fall with noise. They crumble from the inside. Lily glanced over at me and smiled, a real one. I had a good teacher, she said. The rest of the night blurred into photographs and soft music, but one moment remained seared in my memory. Near the exit, just as I was helping Grandma Eleanor into her coat, I felt a vibration in my pocket. A text. Mom, dinner at the rental house, 7 o'clock. Family's all here. We'd like to celebrate both of you. I showed it to Lily, then to Grandma. She's trying, Lily said, but even she sounded uncertain. Grandma snorted. After a decade of silence, a text and a roast chicken don't fix much. I'm not going for them, I said. If I go, it'll be to close the door. Not to reopen one. Lily slipped her arm around mine. Then let's go. Together. This time, you're not walking in alone. We stepped into the cool night air, heels clicking on the sidewalk. I had walked away from them once in shame. This time, I would walk in on my own terms. With proof. With power. With people who had seen my ashes and stayed to watch me rise. The rental house perched on the edge of Lake Michigan, all glass railings and rental-grade charm, pretending to be warmer than it was. Inside, laughter floated from the living room. Forced, brittle, the kind that only survives under the weight of polite obligation. I stood outside the front door with Lily, and Grandma Eleanor, the porch light flickering like a nervous heartbeat. You sure you're ready for this? Lily asked, hand poised over the doorknob. I'm not here for them, I said. I'm here for the version of me that used to believe they were the only ones who mattered. She nodded and opened the door. Inside, the conversation faltered for a half-second before resuming at double speed. Aunts, uncles, and cousins turned and offered polite hellos, some warmer than others. My parents stood near the dining table where roast chicken, potato gratin, and a store-bought cake tried to convince everyone that this was normal. Emma, my mother said, walking toward me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We were just saying how proud we are of both our daughters. Both? I asked. Funny. It felt like only one of us had a seat at the table for most of our lives. A few heads turned. Forks paused mid-air. We're trying, sweetheart, she replied. We've had time to reflect. Your father and I have spoken. You've had years, I interrupted. Years where I was struggling, surviving, and succeeding without a single check-in. Now that I'm on magazine covers, suddenly there's space at the table again? My father cleared his throat and stepped forward. Emma, we made mistakes, but we believed Lily had the clearer path, that she was a safer investment. I almost laughed. You treated your children like stocks in a portfolio, and when mine paid dividends, now you want to cash in? Across the room, Uncle Jack muttered, She's not wrong, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom's smile cracked. We never stopped loving you. That's the part that hurt most, I said. That you did love me, but not enough to bet on me, not enough to stand beside me when it cost you comfort. Lily spoke then, voice calm but sharp. I let you do it. I let you pick me as the golden child, and I didn't question it, but I see it now. And I won't keep pretending that was okay. The silence that followed was heavier than anger. It was the silence of recognition, of the floor giving way beneath years of denial. Grandma Eleanor stepped up, voice steady as stone. Love without support isn't love, it's convenience. I looked at the table, still laden with food no one seemed to want anymore. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the bracelet, Hers, now mine. Silver, delicate, passed down from a woman who'd believed in me long before anyone else had. I don't need an apology, I said. I needed to speak, to be heard, and now I have. I turned to go, but my mother reached out. Let us be part of your life again. Please. I paused, then looked her in the eye. That will take more than dinner. As I walked to the door, Lily fell in beside me, her expression unreadable but her presence grounding. Some silences are meant to be broken, others are meant to be walked away from. Tonight I chose both. The night after the confrontation, I didn't cry, I didn't collapse or second-guess myself the way I used to. Instead, I sat on the deck behind Grandma Eleanor's cottage, wrapped in one of her thick hand-knit throws, a cup of tea cooling beside me, the lake stretched out under the moonlight like a mirror, quiet and unwavering. Lily joined me, barefoot, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me, our shoulders barely touching. I read your speech again, she said softly. The part about worth being built, not granted. I keep thinking about that. It took me years to believe it, I admitted. Too long. I think I believed I was worthy only because someone else wasn't, she whispered. Because that's how they raised us, like love was a scarce resource. I turned to her. It wasn't yours either. We sat with that. 2 daughters, raised on comparison, now finally learning how to sit side by side without the distance of expectation or guilt. Later that week, I packed for New York. My apartment lease had already been signed, paid for with a portion of the innovation grant, and a first performance bonus from Alexander Global. Zoe had offered to help me move, but Grandma insisted on driving me to the airport herself. In the passenger seat, she handed me a small wooden box. Inside was the original scholarship agreement I had signed with Westfield, now framed, along with a faded photo of the 2 of us at the lake when I was 11. Me sketching on the dock, her reading a thick novel in a straw hat. Proof, she said, that beginnings don't define endings, and that the ones who believed in you when it was quiet still believe now. I hugged her harder than I had in years, not because I feared the goodbye, but because I had finally learned how to receive love that didn't come with conditions. New York was loud, fast, and different. Everything Westfield wasn't, and I loved it. My first day at Alexander Global, Jennifer Alexander herself introduced me at a partner meeting. This, she said, is Emma Whitmore. She knows how to build under pressure, how to lead without needing a pedestal, and how to listen before speaking. Learn from her. I didn't speak much that first day. I observed, took notes, introduced myself quietly, but by the end of the week, I had already signed 2 new clients to Whitmore Assist, now fully operational as a remote agency, run by 3 students I once mentored. The business was no longer just mine, it was a legacy. In the months that followed, I began drafting the foundation plan for a scholarship of my own. Not just for top students, but for the forgotten ones. The ones who worked 2 jobs and slept 4 hours a night. The ones who were told they were too quiet, too risky, too different. It would be called the Eleanor Grant for Relentless Potential. And when it launched, I sent the announcement to my parents, not to gloat, not to reopen old wounds, just to say, this is who I became. Lily visited often. We'd walk the High Line, talk about nonprofit work, compare books. Our bond was still tender but real. One evening over dinner, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I stirred my tea. "I don't know, but I don't need to anymore. Forgiveness used to be a finish line. Now, it's just a path, and I'm okay walking it at my pace." She nodded, quietly. Before she left, she added, "They talk about you now with pride, with regret, too. I hope so, I said, but I'm not living for that anymore, because I had already lived through the silence, and I had learned how to fill it with my own voice. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you've made it this far, you know this was never just about college or business or even recognition. This was about voice. What it means to be silenced, to be underestimated, and to rise anyway. To everyone out there who has ever felt like the invisible one at the table, the sibling in the shadow, the child not chosen, the voice ignored, I see you. And I hope this story reminded you that your value has never depended on someone else's ability to recognize it. To the professors who took an extra moment to ask how I was really doing, to the roommate who fed me not just meals but dignity, to the friends who showed up not for the celebrations but for the breakdowns, you are the true architects of my success. To my grandmother, who believed before there was anything to show for it, thank you for planting the seed when I could barely hold the soil. Your voice has been the compass I followed in every moment I felt lost. And to my younger self, if you're still in there, waiting for someone to say you're enough, I hope you heard it loud and clear by now. We didn't just survive, we built, we bloomed. We are not defined by the ones who left us behind. We are defined by how we choose to move forward, who we lift, what we create, and the truths we refuse to bury. So if you're watching this and you're still in the valley, still working, still aching, still dreaming, this is your sign to keep going. Because one day your silence will no longer be a void. It'll be the stage you stepped away from just before the world finally turned to listen. If this story spoke to something in you, share it. Pass it on. You never know who needs to hear that their worth isn't lost. It's just been waiting for the right moment to shine. And if no one's told you today, you matter. You are not alone. And your voice is not too quiet. It's just gathering strength, touching, and thank you for choosing to believe,